Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
Okay, so we're here again, continuing with some movie discussions, taking a little break from
Yup.
the breakdowns, but we will be
Yup.
back soon with those.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah.
And today we are talking about movie franchises.
Franchises. Listen, I got plenty of them. I got plenty of franchises.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get started, I did want to remind you folks if you could please give us a subscribe on YouTube. It would really help us out. As per usual, we appreciate those of you who already subscribe, and we appreciate those of you that are tuning in to watch or to listen to us. But it would help us out even more if you could give us a subscribe, and that would help us expand our reach. Thank you so much. All right, so here's how we're going to do this. We're going to discuss 5 of our favorite movie franchises,
Yep.
and we're not going to do any ranking, not today, but we're going to do 5 apiece. But to kick things off, we'll do like 5 franchises that like honorable mentions, so to speak, before we get into things. So we'll each of us will go first, and then we'll jump into our 5 movie franchises, our favorites, so to speak.
Yeah.
That desert island. Which movie franchises would we want to take with us? So I'm going to go first, and I will be as brief as I can with these here. Um, a few of these I wanted to say because of just historically speaking, but I need to be true to myself.
Yeah.
How often have you watched these guys? How much more would you watch them after the fact? So the first one here, I'm gonna go just more of a recency type deal,
hmm
recency buys, and I'm gonna say the Middle Earth franchise.
All right. We're
So
going Middle Earth.
yeah, the Lord of the Rings. It hasn't really been like one of my favorites,
hmm
but it's a TV show actually. The Rings of Power on Amazon brought me back, and I'm getting starting to get context now, and so that's about it. Obviously the LOTR trilogy, one of the best trilogies of all time. We had the
hmm
Hobbit trilogy, and now we have the Rings of Power, which is continuing and such. They're talking about continuing to build this franchise for the future. So Middle Earth, that's as far as that goes. So, how do you feel about the Middle Earth franchise, Ricardo?
Man, listen, I came on to those movies really late. We've talked
Yeah,
about this.
yeah,
That was one of those that franchise that I missed out on when it first came out. I remember all the hype. I remember them. And one year there was like a big snowstorm in our area, and we were just like, my wife was like, "Hey, you're gonna watch these movies," and I was like, "All right, let's go."
yeah,
And watching these movies, and I was like, "Wow, I can understand the hype behind these movies.
right,
I can." It's one of those where I have plenty of friends who tell me it's their favorite franchise of all time.
yeah,
Numerous friends actually who can go on and on about it. I thoroughly enjoy them. I wouldn't, for me, it wouldn't. I've got other franchises that I connect with a little bit more. Um, the fantasy aspect of certain things and myself, it's hit and miss for me. It's very hit and miss.
yeah,
But I would be blind to say that these movies don't do amazing things, and they definitely get the recognition that they deserved.
yeah, absolutely. I went for something historical as another one. I said Back to the Future. It's a trilogy, self-contained. Yeah, trilogy, self-contained, just solid. One of the very few trilogies that actually broke the curse of the three, in my
hmm
opinion. So I went for Back to the Future. I went Alien as the other one. So
Ooh,
so here's
okay,
the thing. I'm not gonna say Predator because I'm not too fond of many of the Predator movies.
okay.
I love the first one. And
hmm
then the other ones are kind of hit or miss for me. I'm just kind of really not into them. However, Aliens, like we have, 4 Alien movies. We have Prometheus, Alien Covenant, and then they
hmm
also count AVP, Alien versus
Yeah,
Predator, and Alien
yeah.
versus Predator 2. So, just the concept of Alien and what it's done over the years, the crossovers. So that was another one. Um, Spoiler alert. neither of us is probably going to say the Marvel Cinematic Universe today. So
It's
it's just
too big.
it's too
It's
many.
too
There's too many.
massive.
Yeah, we may or may not say something from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's just too many movies. But I did want to give a shout to the Avengers movies. There's 4
Mhm.
movies there. So there's Avengers, Avengers Age of Ultron, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. And each time one of those movies came out, I felt like it was a nice culmination of what they'd been building towards each time. You know, you can't discredit the cast, solid actors in their own right outside of the MCU. So I gave a shout to the Avengers. And then my last franchise, it's a little bit of a cheat, but it's the Spider-Man franchise. And it's
It's a good one.
so we're going to include every single Spider-Man movie, not just we have the Raimi trilogy, we have the Mark Webb, um, 2 movies there, Amazing Spider-Man. We have Waits, I can never pronounce his name, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I know.
the Homecoming trilogy,
Mhm.
and then recently Into the Spider-Verse.
Yep.
So
Oh my god, forget
yeah,
about it.
yeah. So there's a lot of Spider-Man movies in there. So there we go. So those are my just honorable mentions there. As far as that goes, just to recap. So I said the Middle Earth franchise. I said Alien, Back to the Future, Avengers, and Spider-Man. So
And
there we go.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
For me, there's a couple honorable mentions, and it's always so hard when we do this stuff because
Right.
like it's like I could literally put all of these in my favorite franchises, but since we're doing just 5, it's like, okay, let me see which 5 I really want to get into depth and talk about today in terms of, how often I
Right.
watch them, how much I love them. So for
Right.
me
Oh,
to start,
excuse me. I
go
want
ahead,
to
what you got?
interject here. Apparently the Sony Spider-Verse movies, the Sony, not Spider-Verse, the Venomverse movies are included in that.
Wow, see that's
So
huge.
yeah, it's a Wikipedia thing here. Yeah. So now we're including Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and Morbius as well in the Spider-Man
All
movies.
right.
So still just an honorable mention for me though, but I wanted to put
Yes.
that out there. So
Yes.
excuse me. Continue, sir.
So, okay, so I'll start off with one that you mentioned as well, Back to the Future. That is in my
Cool.
honorable mentions. I love Back to the Future. It's one of those movies. What I really appreciated about that trilogy is they all take place directly after the next
Yeah.
movie, and I thought that was really cool. It's one of those trilogies that, and I've done it. I've done that binge watch where I watch all 3 in one day, and it just feels so awesome to have that connective tissue and feel like not a day has even passed, and it's so awesome. And I'm a huge fan. Obviously, love the theme, the DeLorean, Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd. They're a staple of my childhood in a sense. I remember growing up watching those movies over and over again. I'm still waiting for the flying skateboard and whatnot. I'm still
Yeah.
waiting for all that. But yeah, so I wanted to name that because you named that.
Yeah. I
Rocky.
yeah.
Rocky was another one.
All right, 1 second. I want to interject here with Back to the Future. I
Mhm.
looked it up. Zemeckis said that there will not be anything, no prequel,
Nope.
sequel, reboot, or nothing until he passes away.
Yep, as
So
long as he is alive, they will not touch it, and
yeah,
I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful because
yeah,
it's one of those that I'm very happy that we can keep it in like a vault
right.
and like there's just no
I,
one's gonna touch
I
it. I
mean,
like that.
and they have an opportunity. I mean, Michael J. Fox is still with us, as is
Mhm.
Christopher Lloyd. So
Oh
they
yeah.
could try to open it up to younger people, but no, we're not going to do that. So yeah,
We've gotten pranked over the years. I remember one year there was I don't remember if it
yeah,
was April Fools, but there was a prank that's saying Justin Bieber was gonna be the new Marty McFly,
yeah.
and they were doing and I was like, "What are you talking about? Leave it alone." I've
Absolutely,
seen I've seen fan-made trailers where they did a Fast and Furious and Back to the Future, almost like a connective sequel, and it was fake, obviously, but it was super funny.
sure,
So yeah, so there's that.
yeah,
For my second honorable mention,
yeah,
and again, this could very easily go into my top franchises of all time, but we're just doing 5. So I put Rocky, Sylvester Stallone's Rocky.
cool.
I absolutely adore it. I think that it's his biggest character work to date. I love that the Rocky franchise is still creating new stories to this
Oh,
day when you
so
have
nice.
Creed. And
Right.
I love that aspect of seeing how much there's still in the spirit of Rocky that he can it's almost like its own universe that you had the Rocky films and now we're moving into Creed and whatnot, but the spirit of Rocky's still there.
Yeah.
So Rocky's always been that movie for me. I love those movies. I love the tale of the underdog in the first movie and watching his career grow throughout the films and just I love it. The Rocky movies, Philadelphia, we're very close. So you can't
Yeah,
help but have that for me. That goes in honorable mention. And again, that could easily it's in my favorite franchise of all time. But we only go talk about 5 today, so
that's all
I
right.
don't get anybody's ears off. Another one that you mentioned, Spider-Man. I have
Yeah,
Spider-Man honorable mentions. I remember when the when Sam Raimi dropped Spider-Man 1
right,
and just kind of like blew me away. And then Spider-Man 2, which many would argue is one of the greatest Spider-Man films of all time, one
right,
of the greatest combo films of all time. It's one of my favorites. Spider-Man 3, had little hiccups, but I can watch it today
right.
and find enjoyment in a lot of what was done in that movie. And I think that over the years, we've seen the Spider-Man lore and universe grow, and
Yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse is another one for
Whew,
me. Where I
great
could just
movie.
get into it. So I love that franchise. I love Spider-Man. I like all the actors. I think you got Toby, I think Andrew, and I think oh god,
Tom
um
Holland.
Tom Holland. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I think they're all great Spider-Man in their own ways. I don't think there's
sure.
ever been a bad Spider-Man. So, that's another one for me. And it's got probably one of the greatest castings with Mr. Oh god, Jonah
Defoe?
Jameson. Jonah Jameson as
Oh, J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons. Thank you.
Yeah,
He I was like, yo, you can't get any better casting than that. I was like, that's incredible.
right,
So yeah, Spider-Man goes in there for me as another franchise that you mentioned.
right.
Another one I'm gonna mention, the Cornetto trilogy
There we go.
from Edgar Wright,
Yeah,
where a lot, it's they don't play the same characters. They're obviously different stories, but they're all there. It's a trilogy. They've called it the Cornetto trilogy because it's the
sure.
same team work on all the films. You have Edgar Wright, you have Simon Pegg, you have Nick Frost, and I love how each movie tackles a different genre. Where you have the horror zombie apocalypse and Shaun of the Dead, and then you have you have Hot Fuzz, which is the mystery thriller comedic almost buddy cop movie, and then you have At the World's End, which is a sci-fi alien epic movie and stuff like that. So I love that trilogy. I own all 3 of those films. I've watched it numerous times, time and time again. It's a perfect trilogy to me. It's a perfect trilogy to me. So the Cornetto trilogy gets in there. And my last honorable mention, it is a big one, but I just felt like there was other franchises I want to talk more in depth today.
Sure.
So I put Star Wars in my honorable mention.
Oh,
Put Star Wars in my
that's a
honorable
surprise.
mention.
I would
I
I would have felt you would have picked that
Yes.
as your 5. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and that's the thing. It's just that like I feel like Star Wars. I think because I've talked about Star Wars already a lot with many people that I was like, okay, let me talk about franchises I haven't really opened up about.
Right,
So
show
I
some
said
love
for
to
today,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I was like,
I like
all
it.
right. So for today,
Fair
I'll
enough.
put Star Wars in an honorable mention, even though I adore it. I said, but I kind of want to talk to people about other franchises that I haven't
Right,
really talked about before. Give some love, share that love a little bit. So I
right,
put Star Wars there, and I mean, what can I say? That
right,
hasn't been said already about Star Wars. I love Star Wars. When we were growing up, we started with A New Hope. There are many people that started with Episode 1, and I have friends that are younger than me that they look at Episode 1, 2, and 3 as their original trilogy, and they
right.
like that more. I obviously like what would be now considered Episode 4, 5, and 6. We've got great films like Rogue One. We're getting some
There we
great
go.
shows like The Mandalorian. And I think that there's something for me to find enjoyment in a lot of the Star Wars films, even though some Star Wars films near the later end, I kind of started to have a little bit of a shakiness, if you
Right.
will, and whatnot. But overall, I mean, I just can't help but
Yeah.
appreciate
It's
the
I mean,
lore and the saga.
yeah, yeah, it's so funny. There's a joke that I don't want to poke fun, but the people that hate Star Wars the most
The
are
Star
Star
Wars
Wars
fans,
fans.
the Star Wars
You know,
fans.
so because they're frustrated because they want to see
Yeah.
certain things, but
Yep.
they most of them love the original trilogy.
Mhm.
The prequel trilogy, it's hit or miss, and you talk about divisive the Force Awakens trilogy. That has certain things too.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and now we're diving into the shows on Disney Plus.
Mhm.
We have a few shows now, so I mean, kudos that in a way Disney breathed new life into it
Yeah.
when the Force Awakens happened to capitalize to just continue doing things. So all the respect in the world. Now one of my favorites, but I have so much respect for that franchise. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so
those are mine. The Cornetto trilogy, Back to the Future, Rocky, Star Wars, and Spider-Man. Those are my honorable mentions for today.
good stuff. So spoiler alert, folks, we're probably gonna rank all the Spider-Man movies one day because
Oh, I can't wait.
that'll be a fun conversation. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. May or may not include the Venomverse movies. We'll see, but we got to rank all the Spider-Man movies. Maybe when Across the Spider-Verse comes out. There we go. That'll be
I'm so excited for that
yeah,
movie,
yeah.
man. So
That's good stuff. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna start with my first of the five franchises that I wanted to show some love to today,
all right.
and one of mine is one of your honorable mentions,
Oh, okay.
and I'm gonna say the Rocky franchise, and
Yeah.
it was already solid with the 6 original movies. It was already solid, but the Creed trilogy is what gave me a better appreciation for what they were trying
Mhm.
to do because there was such a transition with Rocky being just an older mentor figure,
Yeah.
coming in with Adonis and, his father Apollo just obviously not being able to be around for the franchise, but just it would have been so easy to pick somebody else to play to recast, and have
Yeah.
somebody play Rocky's son because we know Rocky's son exists in that universe. I don't know if that actor would have came back. We don't know,
Mhm.
but they found a way to make it be about Adonis, and that made it just so much cooler.
It was great. It was so
Just
good.
something different. They picked Michael B. Jordan of all people to play to play
It's
Adonis.
so good. It's so good.
Yeah, and
And like we said, I love that it's still giving us something. The Rocky
absolutely.
franchise is still giving us something.
Yeah, and it's so cool because you talk about like feel good movies. These are some feel good movies. And I really appreciate the fact that in 2023, we're still getting movies from this franchise that are feel good movies because
Mhm.
people like to say that, like, oh, it's cheesy, because Rocky came out in the 70s. That's when it first started. So it was just like, oh, well, that worked in the 70s and the 80s, but it's not really working anymore. And then all of a sudden in the mid 2000s, Rocky Balboa comes out and it's all the rage again, and
Bro,
it's just like, it's such a good story, just feel good stories following Rocky Balboa. So for me, my first pick here, and if not for Creed 3, I probably wouldn't have picked this, but it's sold me after I saw what a good job they did with that movie. So
I love Rocky, man.
yeah,
When they did Rocky Balboa, I remember like there's a couple things I recall, especially about Rocky Balboa, and it's got one of the greatest monologues from Stallone as Rocky. It's not
absolutely.
about how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Right,
It's an unbelievable monologue that it carries so much weight, and it embodies the spirit of Rocky.
right.
And I love, again, like you said, to many people who would say, oh, it's kind of cheesy. They were in the 70s and early 80s, Happy Birthday Polly with the robot coming in and whatnot, being silly and over the top. And you got Mr. T and everything
Right,
else. You got the music montages of the 80s. And
right,
people are like, oh, it's very cheesy and corny. But I love that they showed that the character of Rocky can fit into that time period really well and fit into our modern world very well. And you just see him as this, as a father, as a fighter in the ring and in life. And I love that about Rocky, and I love that monologue, and I love that whole aspect, man. There was not a dry eye in the movie theater in Rocky Balboa. The whole
nah,
idea of like he just needs to get it out of the basement, that feeling that he still has there. He's lost
right,
Adrian, and he's got anger, he's got all these feelings, and he just needs to get it out. And I love that after the fight in Rocky Balboa, he goes, Paulie, it's gone, I got it, it's out. And like it just hits, because the one thing I love about Rocky too is the Rocky movies show you, you know it's not always about winning, like winning the fight. You
yes,
know what I mean? You don't have to win the fight. You just got to keep going. And even in his losses, Rocky shows
right,
you just how important it is to have that don't give up attitude and mentality and keep moving forward. It's not about how
right,
hard you get hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. You know what I mean?
right.
So I absolutely adore that about the
Yeah,
Rocky franchise.
and just in real life, just the story of Stallone selling this to the studios. They
Yep.
were trying to buy it off of him, and but they wanted somebody else. He's like, "No, I have to play Rocky."
Yep.
And he had a unique look, and they were like, at the time, they were, "No, you don't look like a movie star and not gonna happen," And I think he directed the first movie too,
Mhm.
so he kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and it wasn't even for that. It was a very low amount. I remember it was like
Yeah.
the studio compromised and they sold it. They were like, okay, we'll pay you for this, but since you want to direct it and be in it, we're not going to give you as much. Obviously, Stallone has done well for his career
Yep.
since then, but Stallone bet on. We say this a lot. He bet on himself,
He
and
did.
he won.
Absolutely.
He ended up becoming one of the biggest movie stars of all time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and this is just one of those things, though, for me. Like, it's just something you don't see when you're younger, but as you get older, your tastes change. And
Yes.
as I've gotten older, and when I look back at these movies, I'm like, man, such heartwarming movies and movies with a message of hope. So, and
Yeah.
that's what we need. We need
Yeah,
more.
you know what I
We
mean?
need more hope.
Like talk about it when he fights Drago and he goes to he fights in another country
Right.
in their home, and he says and he gets them to shift. He gets them to start rooting for him because they see how much fight he has in him and he won't give up.
Exactly.
And I love his speech and he goes if I can change and you can change, then we can all change. And
Yeah.
again, like you're watching a boxing movie and they
Right.
still have these moments of like just a heartwarming message, and
Exactly.
you don't expect it in a movie about guys just punching each other in the face, but you get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, um, to talk about just the Creed trilogy too, we have, I believe Ryan Coogler, he did the first 2
Mhm.
movies, and
Yep.
then, I mean, there's a director we could talk about, but,
Oh yeah.
and then Michael B. Jordan took up the 3rd one, and it's and there's, like, a cultural shift too, which they needed to do.
Yes.
If we were gonna approach Adonis being the lead, it had to be culturally, um, sound, and they did that,
Mhm.
with what they did with Adonis being the lead, so, absolutely. So, yeah, Rocky, that's my first pick, so
It's a good pick, man. It's
yeah,
like I said, I was like, "Oh, man." So I'm glad I put in honorable mentions because we
yeah,
still got to talk about it because you have it. So I'm like, "All right,
absolutely.
perfect." See, we got it in there.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So, okay, so I'll go with one. So one of my first honorable, not my honorable mention, I'm sorry. One of my top 5 franchises is a spy action because I think that it's a franchise that has grown over time and only gotten
Okay.
better and better and better. And that's going to be the Mission Impossible franchise.
Alright, man.
Because man, when I tell you, like, obviously this is based off a TV show that I didn't grow up watching,
Right.
but getting into the movies and watching Mission Impossible 1 came out in 1996, I'm like, okay, that was pretty cool. And then you have Mission Impossible 2, which was kind of, a little mixed reviews here and there. But then for Mission Impossible 3, it just kept up in the game.
Yeah.
And it's almost like Tom had made a bet with himself about how crazy he could get in these movies with the stunt work, the action
Right.
sequences, and the Mission Impossible movies became event films for me where I was like, I have to go see these in the theaters. And that's one thing that I appreciated about this franchise is that with Rocky, like Rocky came out before I was born. So obviously I learned about Rocky as I was growing up watching on television and whatnot. But Mission Impossible is one of those movies that I could go to the movies and watch every one of these movies in that theater experience and just watching the big screen, him step it up, and just watching Tom Cruise go above and beyond to do these incredible sequences and always understand that he has to up the game each and every time to the point now where like you're just watching him do these stunt breakdown videos and you can see how much passion he has when he talks about these movies, that when I see these, I see Tom and I'm like, wow, like these movies have almost cemented Tom as many people have considered him to be one of the greatest of all time now.
Right.
And it's because of this franchise, because, Tom has always been a great actor. We've seen Tom in other movies do amazing performances, but for whatever reason, that conversation of people going, yo, he's one of the last few really big stars today is because of this franchise, because he's constantly been growing and getting more out of it. And just when you think that this franchise might not have any more legs, they come back with another banger. You know what I mean? Like again, like after Ghost Protocol, I was like, I don't know, like that. I think we're wrapped, and they were like, no, yeah, Rogue Nation, and then Fallout with Henry Cavill playing a villain.
There
You
we
know what I
go.
mean? Like it's just I don't know. It's so cool. I love that spy world. I love the technology of wearing other people's faces. I love the theme music. They introduced Limp Bizkit at one point with the Mission
I remember
Impossible
that,
theme. You
yeah.
know what I mean? And I was like, this is incredible. I still work out to that song every once in a while. But for me, and I think we have two more Mission Impossible films. I think they broke the last one into two pieces.
Yeah.
And I've been watching, like, on social media, this guy doing this stunts and hanging off of planes and like, hey, see you at the movies, guys. And I'm just like, wow. So for me, one of my favorite franchises of all time, and it looks like we got two films left, and that'll be the end of it.
Right.
It's the
I
Mission
think
Impossible
right.
franchise.
I think we're at 6 right now, and then we have
Yep.
2 more.
Yep.
8, so it'll be 8 total, and,
Yep.
good for Tom Cruise, man, and good for Christopher McQuarrie just hooking up with him
Yeah.
and breathing new life into the franchise at one point, you know, and,
Yep.
they're doing great.
Yep, and and
Absolutely.
and and you and you see it in their cast too, because like the Mission Impossible cast used to filter out different teams for Ethan, but then
Mhm.
as you notice, the moment they brought in Simon Pegg and whatnot, and Christopher McQuarrie, they kept them, and Simon
Right.
Pegg has been a great addition, and Ving Rhames, they've kept him on board and whatnot, and I just love that aspect. They had Jeremy Renner, and they're reintroducing characters, so I like that they're hanging on to characters now a little bit more than they used to in the past, and again, I have to see these in the movies. I have to. I adore them. I own them on Blu-ray, DVD, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to continue buying these, and when this franchise is over, I'll be able to sit back and say like, wow, that is easily one of my favorite franchises of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Alrighty, so ooh, what do I pick
Ooh,
next?
ooh, exactly. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?
I'm going to pick the X-Men franchise.
Ooh, that's such a
So,
good one.
yeah, so it's once again, it's a cheat, but it's
Mhm.
listed as a franchise. It's gonna be every single X-Men movie. So,
Okay.
we're looking at the Bryan Singer,
Mhm.
well, he didn't do all of them, but the original X-Men trilogy. Then we're gonna get the 4 First Class movies. So it's First Class, Days of Future Past. Oh, such a great movie.
Bro.
Um, and then we have Apocalypse, and then Dark Phoenix, and then we have the Deadpool movies: Deadpool 1, Deadpool
Yeah.
2. Um, we have the New Mutants. That's a part of the franchise too,
Yep.
and we can't not talk about the Wolverine trilogy, which ends with Logan, one of the
Wow.
greatest superhero movies of all time. So,
Come on.
um,
Yeah. Come
so
on.
they're not all um critically acclaimed. They're not all hits, so to speak, but there's enough good in this franchise that I wanted it to be in my top 5.
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman is in almost every single one, and he's great every single time you see him. Um, it's had so many ebbs and flows over the years, and credit to Fox that they just kept this franchise going and kept trying to do that. It didn't always hit, but at least they kept trying to do new things.
Yeah.
And I remember that, when First Class was first announced, it was just like, well, why are we doing a prequel? Why do we need this? We had a couple Wolverine movies at the time. The trilogy had kind of already ended, but you went and you got Fassbender to play Magneto
Bro.
and James McAvoy to play Charles Xavier, and just based upon those two castings alone, it helped. And
Bro.
it's
The
so
X
exciting.
The X-Men franchise, if there's one thing that can be said about that franchise is when they get their casting right, they get it
Right,
right. Like, I remember when X-Men came out, the first X-Men, I believe it was in the year 2000, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember seeing the trailers for, X-Men and seeing Hugh Jackman, unfamiliar with who he was, and
right,
I was like, "That's Wolverine? That's Wolverine? That," and I'm a kid, I'm like, That's not Wolverine." And then the movie came out, and I was like, "Okay, that's Wolverine." And
right,
I think it would be a bold-faced lie to sit here and pretend that at some point or another, like, are you trying to tell me that not a single person wanted Patrick Stewart to be Xavier? Like, that was, like,
right,
everyone's fan cast. So, like, even when they didn't know their name, like, I don't know why I have this memory. I can remember as far back as when before that movie was announced, and my cousin saying to me, "You know who should play Xavier? Because they're making a movie. It should be the bald guy from Star Trek." It wasn't even
right.
familiar with his name, but everybody, it was always
Yes,
that. And then you got Ian McKellen as Magneto,
absolutely.
just absolutely crushing it. And then you have the prequels, like you said, it's like, oh, we're making First Class. And it was like, well, why are we going back? And then being a little nerdy about it, I was like, well, that's not the First Class. That's not who it's supposed to be. What's
Right.
happening? And then the movie came out, and it's like, that movie was terrific. And you got incredible performances, and arguably one of my favorite Magneto scenes in any X-Men movie,
Mm,
which is when he's sitting down at the table
right,
with the former Nazi soldiers and he's just having that conversation. And Michael Fassbender is just unbelievable in that role as Magneto. And then you have the other scene where, Xavier's teaching him how to move something really big in the satellite, and he taps into his memory of his mom. And it's
right,
again, it's just one of those that franchise again. Say what you will, hit and miss, but when they hit,
right.
the X-Men
They're
movies hit.
right. They're not all, gems, and I
Mm-mm.
recognize that, but just and it's such a nice alternative too to either Warner Brothers and the DC movies, regardless of what, continuity you're looking at, the
Mhm.
MCU. Over here, we have Fox, who's not afraid to
Yes.
get their hands dirty with the X-Men franchise. Some of them
Yes.
are rated R.
Yeah.
We're dealing with, I mean, and like, let's be honest here, like, we're not dealing with just good guys versus bad guys. We're dealing with some
Mm.
mature themes here.
Yes.
It's about like it's like the mutants, end to all mutants, and it's just like, are we still talking about superheroes here? Or
Yeah.
are we talking about
Yeah.
prejudice and discrimination?
Yep.
You're talking about the history of Magneto being a Holocaust survivor. Like,
Mhm.
it's just so deep, the history. So um, I couldn't leave them off the list. So
I'm
because
so
of
glad
that,
I'm so glad
yeah,
because I was thinking about it too, man. And again, it's one of those
yeah,
franchises where, like you said, and I'll be honest, and I've told people this, X-Men is my favorite Marvel property. It's my absolute favorite because I love the themes that it explores. I love the idea that it explores the prejudice and differences of people around them, and
right,
people fear what they don't understand. And I love that. And I love that those movies weren't afraid to go there.
right,
I love that aspect of it. I love that they were like, "Hey, we're not going to sugarcoat it. Like this is what it's about." Again, we had Magneto as a Holocaust survivor, and we're showing these really horrific scenes. And
right,
what I love about it is that, like you said, it was almost as if they understood that there weren't really good guys and bad guys. There was a gray area when it came to the X-Men, where you
right,
could understand Xavier and you could understand Magneto.
right,
You could understand them both. And I think that's what helped the franchise overall, was that great duality and dynamic that we as viewers can understand both perspectives. And it's another reason why I used to get so excited. Like you said, it was awesome at the time. We don't have it anymore, but it was so awesome at the time that we had DC films, you had the MCU, but then you had this Fox corner that
yeah,
just had these X-Men. And it was so cool that we had that aspect. I miss it. But it was great when we had it.
yeah, absolutely. So that was my second pick, the X-Men
All
franchise.
right.
Yeah.
That's your second pick. Okay, so my pick, the first film, we're going back to 1981 is when the franchise started.
Okay.
My second favorite franchise pick is the Indiana Jones
Oh,
franchise.
there we go. All right.
I I can't tell you what it was like growing up as a kid and putting a jump rope on my belt and pretending it was a whip and having a jacket and hat. And it was another one of those things. It just has that great adventure vibe in each and every
Okay.
one of those movies. Starting from the Raiders of the Lost Ark and the all the way up into, I think right now, I think the last one was Kingdom of Crystal Skull.
Right.
Because Kingdom of Crystal Skull. That was the last one, and now we have the new one coming out. Which is coming out this summer, but we can't judge that because we haven't seen it yet.
We haven't seen it yet.
So
Right.
for a while, and I'll be very honest, for a while, I used to almost ignore the fourth film because, in my opinion, like the first three are just, for me, they're untouchable. Like I love them, and I know that for
Solid
many people,
solid trilogy.
they
Yeah.
for many people, I think they consider Temple of Doom to be the weakest, the second one, in comparison to Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Last Crusade. The Last Crusade is my favorite, and many people would say that Temple of Doom is the weakest. But for me, growing up as a kid, that was actually the first one I was introduced to. So I
Right.
have this like crazy love, nostalgic feel for that one. But I love those movies. I love what Steven Spielberg and Lucas were able to do with this great character, this guy who was a professor, right? Like you don't necessarily think professor out there as this great adventure hero going out there fighting Nazis, fighting bad guys left and right, using a whip, just crazy adventures every single time. And it's just one of those movies that I have watched continuously all my life. I don't think that I go too long without watching that trilogy. I'll probably watch it over the next few months at some point. Say, hey, you know what? It's time for the Indiana Jones trilogy. It's got one of the most iconic themes of all time. Anyone who hears it knows exactly where it's from. Um, and just I don't know, like I always love the and we don't get it as much anymore, obviously, because of technology, but I always appreciate the practical effects of the Indiana Jones movies, and obviously I think that was one of the things with Kingdom of Crystal Skull, where some people were like, it didn't feel the same because they incorporated a lot more CGI and everything else. But as I've gotten a little older and I've watched that one again, I've grown to appreciate it a little bit more because I feel like the spirit of Indiana Jones is still in it. So I'm like, there are some things that it doesn't necessarily feel like the old movies, but I still feel the spirit of Indiana Jones in that film. So overall, just like the Indiana Jones franchise is one of my favorite. I love that they have decided when Harrison Ford finishes up, that's it. Like
Right.
I love that commitment, almost like Zemeckis saying, "Hey, you will never touch Back to the Future until I'm out of the picture." And I absolutely adore that they kind of put their foot down with this as well, where there have been rumors in the past at one point, it's like, oh, maybe they'll do a James Bond thing where they'll get different actors to play Indiana Jones over the years. And instead, they're like, no, Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. And when he hangs up the hat, that will be the end of the franchise. And I think there's something really special about that because we've talked about this with other franchises. I know I've talked about it with like the MCU. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I feel like I'm missing an ending because it's just ongoing forever and
Right.
ever and ever. And I love the idea that I can have a franchise that will have an opening and a closing. And I look forward to that closing. And we're not there just yet, but as of now and growing up, Indiana Jones just did so much for me as a kid in terms of imagination and whatnot. And that goes that'll be my second pick is Indiana Jones.
Good stuff. So had the trailer for I think it's the Dial of Destiny. Had
Yeah.
that not come out, do you think you would have picked it, or it just did it kind of like spark that like, well, now you're excited again because you saw this new trailer?
Even if James Gold's new film
Right.
was never happening, I still would have picked it
Yeah.
because it's funny because before we decided we were going to talk about this, I was talking about the franchise with a buddy of mine because she loves Indiana Jones,
Right.
and we were just talking about Indiana Jones because I think I told her that it was on a streaming site somewhere. I said, "Oh, hey, by the way, Indiana Jones is streaming if you want to watch it because I know you love it too," and we talk about it. So even if the final film that's coming out, if there was no trailer for it, I would still put this franchise in
Cool.
my favorite franchise of all time because I adore Indiana
All right.
Jones.
Well, yeah. Well,
Overplayed it beyond belief as a
right.
kid.
Well, we have Mangold, who's solid.
Oh yeah.
He did Logan. He's got a few movies under his belt, so that'll be pretty cool to see. Sounds good. This will be my third pick. Um, you know what? Let's just go for it. We're gonna do John Wick.
John Wick,
We're
baby.
gonna we're gonna do John Wick. Yeah. So
Good lord.
it was already there after the third one, but
Mhm.
the fourth one came out, John Wick Chapter 4, and it was just like, all right, well, this is a franchise I cannot do without. It is a
Yep.
franchise I cannot do without. It's been going on since 2014 is when it premiered, and we've had 4 movies, and um, it's what a showcase of stunt people, so to speak, and stunt work, um, fight choreography, gun choreography, just action. It's just like, don't tell me to recall like a lot of the plot points because don't get me wrong, the plot was fine, but I can
Mhm.
recall a lot of the action sequences
Dude,
over the
so good.
course of these 4 movies. And then we have the ballerina that's coming out. That's going to be another movie, a spinoff with starring Ana de Armas, and then we have the Continental, a prequel.
Yep.
So Stahelski, he's expanding this franchise. So I'm looking forward to see where it goes. There's a chance we might get a John Wick 5. All right. It doesn't matter how John Wick 4 ended for me. I'll take a John Wick 5 or I'll take another John
Mhm.
Wick spinoff. So um, I don't think it's a controversial opinion anymore that this is Keanu Reeves' best franchise.
Oh, easily.
No
Easily.
knock on the Matrix. See, the Matrix, the original Matrix is an iconic movie and nothing will ever touch that, just
Nope.
its impact in cinema. But as the franchise went along, it was just kind of like a mixed reaction, to
Mhm.
all the movies. We had a revamp with Resurrections a couple years ago, and So 4 movies in total. There's a couple animated projects too, the Animatrix. So,
Yes.
so we have that, and no disrespect to the Wachowskis and what they were able to do with that franchise. Just the Matrix One is going to go down as one of the greatest movies of all time. Not just
What and I say
yeah,
it, there was a time before The Matrix
right,
and a time after. That movie was
right.
revolutionary.
Absolutely. But we're talking about a franchise as a whole. And if we're talking about as a franchise as a whole, it's got to be John Wick.
John Wick, dude.
Keanu's amazing. And it works with Keanu as older Keanu.
Yes.
If he were younger, it would have been okay, but he's older now, and he's trying to find a way to retire from this life, so it works. And he's older, but he looks good on film, and his delivery, and we have all these little actors coming in here and there, and just makes it even more exciting. They went and got Lawrence Fishburne,
I
so
love it. I love
because
Lawrence
this
Fishburne.
movie, for those of you that don't know, this was birthed from team members that were on the Matrix,
Yes.
and they said, well, we want to start our own thing, and they did it. And John Wick is an original. The
Yes.
first one is an original, so it's just so exciting. It's good stuff. I'm hoping we can do movie breakdowns for the John Wick movies
Oh, I'm
one
ready.
day.
I'm ready.
That would be a really cool thing to do. So there we go. That's my third pick,
It
the
it's
John
it's
Wick
it's
franchise.
it's such a good pick, man, because one of the great things about it, obviously, is like you said, you had a stunt crew, stunt teams, and stunt men and stunt women that were like, we can do this, and no one is gonna make a better action sequence or a stunt sequence than like those types of professionals. And what I love about the franchise, obviously, is it's brought that to light. Like a lot of people who might have taken stunt work for granted are watching these movies and really seeing how much work gets put into this and how much people are willing to do to their bodies for
Right.
entertainment. And I love that about it. We're seeing things in the John Wick franchise that we have never seen in films before in terms of execution, stunts, choreography. And not to say that we haven't seen great things in other films, but this is just different because the people working behind the camera know exactly how to do it because this is what they do. And I love that John has kind of, with his name, Keanu Reeves, has been able to kind of bring out into the world and like, look what these men and women can do. And you're getting other actors that are being brought in, actors like Scott Adkins, who I've wanted to get his flowers for a long time,
Yeah.
and to see him in John Wick 4. And now people are like, who's this Scott Adkins guy? Who's this Scott Adkins guy? And it's like, man, he's been doing this for so long, but because of John Wick and his reach, people are looking into these actors now and whatnot. And I love it. And I love the feel. I love the world building that happens in John Wick 1. And you're kind of like, okay, well, that's the end of it. And they're like, no, there's still legs in here. And like you said, I'm ready for spinoffs. Give me Ballerina, give me
Right.
the Continental. There is, I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but there might be another spinoff that they might have teased in John Wick 4 that we're waiting to see. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Like, we have to find out. But I absolutely adore everything about that movie. And again, I've seen every single one in the theaters, and some of the hits that these things take, man, they just make you, they make your face crunch up, and you're just like, oh my god. And some of the execution and everything that they do, it's flawless, and that the amount of work that they had to put in this was insane. And I think you bring up a good point that this movie, it works so well with Keanu Reeves because of his age, because he's
Right.
older, because he's more beat up and whatnot, and it helps play into the John character that more. And yeah, so I agree with you. I think it's easily one of the greatest franchises that's out there today, and will arguably go down as Keanu's best franchise to date. So I agree with you
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, I'm gonna go silly now.
All right.
I was like, listen, we Star Wars and everything else, definitely in my top franchise. But I said I want to talk about franchises I don't normally get to talk about. So I'm going silly. I'm going a franchise that felt like when it started out, it was going to be a very serious, almost like cop drama, and then we started going into space. I'm talking about the Fast and Furious franchise.
All right,
I'm talking,
man. Good
I'm
for
talking about
you. That's all right.
I'm talking about family. I have
Family.
seen, I have seen, I have seen. I know people are like, "How are you gonna put Fast and Furious in your top five?" And I'm like, listen, like I said, I'm bending a little bit of the rules just because I want to talk about it. Okay, it may not be in my top five if I can have 10. Who knows? I didn't put it.
Right.
I'm not thinking about that, but I want to talk about it. Fast and Furious. I'll never forget in high school. going to see the first Fast and Furious movie and thinking how cool it was because obviously it had really attractive people and it had race cars. You know what I mean? Like that was all it was in high school. And then you had Too Fast, Too Furious, and you're introducing like some more heist things and whatnot. And then you had Tokyo Drift, and it's like, hey, we're gonna do completely new characters. We're gonna go overseas. It's like, okay, this is kind of interesting. What are we doing? Then you had Fast and Furious 4, which was like, okay, we're kind of bringing the old cast back. We're doing this. And then you had Fast 5, which in my opinion is when they injected steroids into this. And no pun intended, but that's
Right,
when The Rock showed up. You know
right.
what I mean? Because like all of a sudden The Rock showed up and this franchise felt like it got an extra umph of juice, you know, and it was no longer a natty franchise. It was on the gas. And they were just like, we're just gonna go 110 miles per hour every single time. And that movie has just gotten those movies have gotten more and more ridiculous. The cast has gotten bigger. They incorporated John Cena. You got Brie Larson. You got Helen Mirren. Like they're just going above and beyond getting all these people. You got Kurt Russell. Like anybody, Charlize Theron. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, listen. It almost felt like the Fast and Furious movies became Avengers movies. It's like Vin Diesel's like, well, we want to compete with the cinematic universes, so that's what we're gonna do. Jason Statham, come on, Jason Statham was one of my favorite action stars of all time, and they incorporated him in there. I got to see him fight The Rock. I got to see him take a rock bottom from The Rock. I got to see him fight Dominic Toretto, and
Right.
he's like, the streets always win, and he stomps the road, and everything collapses. Like you had Michelle Rodriguez, you had Letty's character die, but then she comes back and she has amnesia. I'm like, are we watching a novella? Are we watching a soap opera? What's happening here? But the movies are so fun. They're so ridiculous. We constantly joked that one day they're going to go to space, and Vin Diesel said, "Okay, let's go to space." You know what I mean? And even when that franchise had to deal with a tragedy in losing Paul Walker, they found a way with James Wan to give us one of the most beautiful send offs we've had in a movie or a franchise.
Right.
And because of that, it also gets more points. And they keep trying to find ways to incorporate just having his name involved in the movies and whatnot. So, like I said, I'm going super silly, but I can't help it. These movies are dumb, they're silly, they're over the top. The physics don't make any sense, but I can't help but get so excited when I see a trailer, knowing that I'm going to go to the movies to watch this and see some ridiculous stuff with cars that would never happen. But I'm going to turn my brain off for a little bit because every once in a while, it's perfectly okay if you want to turn your brain off to enjoy a movie, have my popcorn, call it a day. Fast and Furious gets thrown in there for me as another franchise pick.
Good stuff, man. I was wondering if that was gonna come up today. So
Family. Family.
that's good stuff, man.
It's
And in
so
a
dumb. I love it. It's
and in
so
a
dumb.
way, like, I see the Fast and the Furious kinda mirror Mission Impossible
Mhm.
in that they kind of pushed each other as action franchises of the 21st
Mhm.
century. You know, Mission Impossible started in the late '90s, but, um, you know, there were long breaks in between those movies, you know,
Yeah.
like, they would come out, like, every 3 or every 4 years, something like that, you
Mhm.
know? Uh, we're up to, F9 is coming out this
Yeah.
year, you know, and that's been going on for over 20
Oh,
years
wait,
now.
no. No, we're coming up to F10. We're on F10, right? I think
No,
F9 came.
not
Am I
yet. No,
wrong?
no, no. Yeah, Fate of the Furious was last excuse me, you are absolutely correct. F9 was in
I knew it. I knew
2021.
it. Yes,
Good
I knew
good
it. I
job.
knew it. I knew it. I said, "Wait, there's a 9. I know
Yeah,
there's a
there's
9
been
because I'm
9
crazy."
movies. That's wild, you know,
And they
9
make
movies.
money. Those
They
movies
do.
made bank. People wanna see it. It's ridiculous,
Yep.
and I'm in it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, good stuff. I enjoy that. That's a good
Dude,
pick, man.
I had to pick it because I was like, listen, I just want to talk about certain franchises I don't really normally get to talk about. And I was like, let's talk about Fast and Furious. And again, I have friends that think these movies are so stupid. And I'm like, listen, man, I'm not saying these movies are high entertainment art, but they are so much fun. You know what I mean? Like just watching these characters who were just people that worked in a garage to becoming super mega spies. And it's like,
Right.
what is happening now? I don't even care. Dominic can lift the truck with his hands. Cool, why not? Let's see what happens. You know what I mean? I've made jokes with friends that they're the Power Rangers because they all have different colors according to like their cars and whatnot. I'm like, they're like Power Rangers Turbo. And I've had a buddy of mine, we actually binge watched them He never saw them, so he would watch them and I would watch with him and whatnot. We would just talk about it and be like, "Is Dominic Toretto one of the most OP characters of all time?" And we're like, "Yup, just roll with it, just roll with it." It's so fun.
Alrighty. So thank you for that. That was nice. So we're gonna go with my fourth pick here. So you're gonna have to help me out here on how we're gonna
Okay,
solidify this pick. So,
okay,
um, I don't want to see the DC extended universe because I'm not in love with all those movies.
yes,
There are 3 of those movies that I really enjoy,
okay,
and we're talking about, Snyder's trilogy, Man of
mhm.
Steel, Batman v Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Um, I don't wanna just say the trilogy, though, because then that's gonna leave out Wonder Woman.
Wonder
Yeah,
Woman, dude.
that's gonna leave out Wonder Woman, that's gonna leave out see, I'm not ready to say Suicide Squad yet because we haven't gotten the Ayer cut yet,
That's
but
true.
there's a lot to appreciate with that, though. We got the introduction of the DCEU Joker. We got the introduction of
Mhm,
Margot Robbie as Harley, who, regardless of whatever you can say about the movies she's been in, what are you looking at? Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey, and The
mhm.
Suicide Squad. She's amazing in every single one.
She's wonderful as
She's
Harley.
amazing. So there's a lot of things. Aquaman's enjoyable.
Yep.
The first Shazam. So I think I'm gonna cheat here and say the Snyderverse.
Okay.
Instead of saying the DCEU or the trilogy, I'm just gonna say the Snyderverse. And whatever you consider the Snyderverse, then I'm gonna include that in there. So for me, it's Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and Wonder Woman. Those for
Dude.
sure, because I know he was heavily involved as a producer on Wonder Woman. All the credit in the world to Patty Jenkins for directing. We do not want to take that away from her,
Mhm.
but we know Zach casted Gal, and then they ran with things over there. So I think I'm gonna say the Snyderverse. And if not for Zack Snyder's Justice League, I wouldn't put this on the list here. I wouldn't want to give them any love. So I appreciate Man of Steel. I appreciate Batman v Superman. Wonder Woman 2017 is amazing. But if not for that culmination of my childhood and
Yep.
getting to see the Justice League on film in such an epic movie, um, and obviously we've already done our discussion of Zack Snyder's Justice League as I break down the whole story and everything. Like it's gotten to a point where it's not just a movie anymore. It's a story. It's a real life story. That
Yep.
movie in itself. So as my fourth pick, it's a huge cheat, but I'm gonna go for it and say the Snyderverse is my fourth pick.
Bro, it's a great pick, man, because I feel like and we talked about this too, outside of here, where we talked about how like there was a certain feeling we got when we watched these movies
Right.
that we've almost been missing to a degree. And I remember feeling it with Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, Wonder Woman, dude. Wonder Woman is another one that I would look at and say it's arguably one of the best comic book superhero films of all time. Like
Right.
Wonder Woman is just it's everything that I wanted in the Wonder Woman movie and everything that I didn't know I wanted in a Wonder.
Right.
It's exactly what it needed to be. It's when Gal got to really shine
Right.
and we get to really see her play Diana. Great casting. Um, and then like Chris Pine, like as Steve Trevor, like it's
Oh,
perfect. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like they had great chemistry together. It's got great humorous beats. It's got great dramatic elements, great action. Wonder Woman is fantastic. I can't praise that movie enough. Hopefully one day we get to watch and talk about it because that's another one that I'm just
Yeah.
like you got the no man's land scene. My goodness.
Right.
But that whole like you said, like that aspect, that corner of the universe, that Snyderverse, it's kind of hard for me to look at that and not appreciate just how much greatness there is to it in my eyes. Again, it's all subjective, but I love that aspect, that corner of the universe. Man of Steel, again, as a Superman guy, like that's my favorite Superman film to date in live action,
It's
and
okay. Right.
I grew up watching Christopher Reeve, and just being like that's my guy and I was it was just at a different point in time in my life when I watched Man of Steel and was like that was it. And I love the serious and mature themes of Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, and I was just like, I love that he was implementing that into these characters, which we didn't normally see up to this point. The only person that was doing very, very good mature themes with Batman as of late was Christopher Nolan with the Dark Knight trilogy. So it was great to have that aspect again. So I can't be mad at you. I ain't even calling it cheating, man. You just keeping it real. You
Yeah,
just keeping it
yeah,
real. I ain't calling it
and
cheating.
a big part of it too, and don't get me wrong, I don't think these movies are perfect. They're far from
Mm-mm.
perfect, you know?
Yeah,
Um, it's also just within the last 10 years, the things I've gone through in my life personally.
yeah,
So I got to experience these real life experiences while watching what these movies have done,
yeah,
at the same time. So I'm remembering my life experiences along with watching these movies and these superheroes I grew up on at the same time. So yeah, absolutely.
yeah. It's a good pick.
Yeah.
All right. So for my next pick, it's another franchise that I wish I started sooner. I think I started it maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it was one of those that I missed out on the hype, and it came out when I was in high school, and I was too distracted with everything else going on in my life in high school, and I missed out on it. But when I got into it, man, I binge watched it. There's around 7 movies, and I was like, "I have been missing this for far too long." It's the Harry Potter franchise.
Wizarding World.
I Wizarding World, man, take me to Hogwarts,
There we
please.
go. What house are
Expecto
you?
Patronum. I'm a
L
Hufflepuff, my boy.
Hufflepuff? All
I'm
right.
a Hufflepuff. I have been a Hufflepuff since day one.
All right.
We got Batman on our team, bro. We got Robert Pattinson. We got the Batman on Hufflepuff. You know what I mean? That's my boy.
That's great.
Um, but I remember people telling me for years, especially my wife was like, "You should watch Harry Potter. I think you'd really enjoy it." And I was really hesitant because, as I mentioned earlier, like fantasy is very hit and miss with me. I'm very
Okay.
hit and miss with certain fantasy aspects when it comes to certain films. Sometimes I love it and sometimes I'm like, I didn't get really sucked into it. And I watched the Harry Potter franchise, and one thing that I adored about this franchise, and again, I wish I watched it when I was a teenager, because it's one of those franchises that when you can clearly see that the characters and the story and the scripts, they matured as the audience grew, and I love that. So when you start off your first movie, you have them playing children, so the movie feels more catered to families and whatnot, and as they got older, the themes got more mature. So I wish I would have had that where I would have been growing with the themes as well and connect, because I watched them as an adult, and I'm like, okay, the first 2 movies, I'm like, all right, these are more family and whatnot. But then when they got the Prisoner of Azkaban and they're older, I was like, wait, this is getting pretty dark. This is getting really mature. Like we're introducing death, we're introducing like thrilling aspects and horror aspects, and I just love it, man. Like I have a magic wand, man. Like I purchased a wand. I've got scarves. Like there was at one point where I was like, I think I should get a tattoo. I think I'll get a 9 3/4 tattoo somewhere. Like it was really bad. I almost became obsessed with it to a degree. And I remember I had so much fun because I told everyone that everyone that knows me, I was keeping up with, like, on social media, saying, "Hey guys, I'm watching the Harry Potter franchise." So everyone told me, they were like, "Hey, do a live play by play when you watch the final movie." And I was like, okay. And I remember just going on Facebook and I said, "Hey guys, I'm starting a thread and I'm gonna do a live reaction." And it was so fun just watching something and lose my mind and typing and people going, "Oh my god, you're there," da, 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 and watching me go through those emotions. And it was kind of like a time capsule. I got to go back in time and kind of had that feeling where I could share all my excitement with people and people being like, "Oh, isn't this great? Isn't it exciting?" And I adore it. I love that. I love that franchise. I watch it every year. Every year I do a binge watch. Once it gets around November, I start watching it because to me they're like holiday films. They go through the
Right.
holidays, they go through Christmas and whatnot. And once we get the Prisoner of Azkaban, I feel like that's when the wheel really starts moving, and I just can't stop. I love it. I think the cast is great. You got the late great Alan Rickman, who, in the first few movies, I'm like, oh, this guy's a jerk. And then by the last movie, I'm like, oh no, he's my favorite. What happened? You know
Right.
what I mean? So, serious Snape, Snape. You know what I mean? Like it's just, I don't know. I love it. I love it so much that like I've always wanted to do stuff with Harry Potter when it comes to making
Right, and
projects,
then
and
and then, I mean,
it's just
love 'em or
great.
hate 'em, you got the Fantastic Beasts, we have
Yeah.
that
Yep.
too, it's all a part of
Yep.
everything, so,
Yep.
um, but you're talking Harry Potter proper, the original
Yeah,
yeah, the
and I've seen the Fantastic Beasts, and I enjoy them for what they are, don't get it twisted,
right,
but again, like, that core Harry Potter films, and,
right.
I
You
I'm
get you
so
get to you
sorry.
you get to watch the kids grow up in front of your eyes,
Yes, like, and then,
so
like, it still hits me when you watch them grow up, and then at the ending, you see them as adults, and it just hits me, and I'm like, man, there's something really cathartic about that when you watch characters and real life actors grow, because you understand that, like, you're watching as well as you're watching the characters grow, you're watching the actors grow as well, and this has been a part of their lives for so long, and then it's over, and that's why I wish I had that. I wish I was around. I wish I was a part of that fandom when it was happening. I came on really late, but I'm one of those late bloomers, and I apologize that I came so late. But now I watch it every year, and it's one of my all-time favorites. And so for me, that my next
Yeah,
is the Harry Potter franchise.
and your their franchise might be expanding because
Yeah,
they're looking at a reboot of all things that
yeah. I
already,
had
but as a
I
TV show, you know?
yeah. I have words. I'll save that for another day because we'll
Right,
go on forever. So,
right.
but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. I had a feeling you would pick Harry Potter, and I'm glad you did. That's good
I
stuff.
love Harry
So,
Potter.
all right. So we are here at my last pick,
All right.
and it's not going to come as a surprise to you. It's not going to come as a surprise to anybody else that knows me or watches or listens to us. Just going to cut to the chase here. I'm going to pick Batman.
Yeah.
And it's we're just going off of what we see here on online, and as far as franchises and such, Wikipedia. When they talk about franchises, they group everything together, and we'll get down to the nitty gritty here in a second. But included in the Batman franchise, it's 17 films. So here we have the Burton Schumacher films. So that's 4
Mhm.
movies: Batman, Batman Forever, Batman Returns, Batman and Robin. Then we have the Dark Knight trilogy. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises. And then we have included as Batman v Superman. It's in the title,
Yeah.
Batman v Superman. So we have Dawn of Justice, Ultimate Edition,
Ultimate edition, baby.
included in there. Um, Obviously, we have most recently Matt Reeves, the Batman.
Mhm.
So we have that included there too. We have the Lego Batman movie. That was a
Dude, they're great.
Yeah. That
They are
the Lego
great.
movies are great, but the Lego Batman movie is a cinematic release. We have Mask of the Phantasm. That was a cinematic
Oh.
release too. Um, I do have to mention that Catwoman's actually included on here. I don't count that, but
Oh,
it's
really?
yeah, it's included on here. It has nothing to do with the Batman universe at all, except for the name, but that's included in here. Um, we have a couple original animated movies that actually got cinematic releases. So we have The Killing Joke in
Yep.
2016, and then Batman and Harley Quinn in 2017. So those both actually got cinematic releases. And then we have a little Adam West action here, Batman 66. We have Batman the movie, and then Return of the Cape Crusaders.
Mhm.
So, and I want to say, yeah, that's an animated movie. No, is that animated? Select Cinemas. I don't know. Let's see here. Give me a second. It's animated. Yeah.
It's
So
animated?
it's animated, but just an homage to the Batman 66, So 17 movies total. Huge cheats, but Batman is my favorite superhero. And we're talking Desert Island here. Like, if there was only
Yeah.
one franchise I could take with me, it would be Batman, just so I can see
Batman.
every different iteration of Batman. And do I love them all? No. But it's just so cool for me to see my favorite superhero of all time. Just He's timeless at this point, just
Yeah.
done in so many different ways. We have different actors, we have different directors, we have different um, we have different movie series, we have animated. Um, and if you have to force me, shocker, I'm going to pick the Dark Knight trilogy.
Of course.
That's
The
you know,
GOAT, man, the
yeah,
GOAT.
yeah, Nolan, the Dark Knight trilogy. I'm going to pick that if you have to force me. But as far as an overarching franchise, we're gonna pick Batman. So
And Batman's good, man.
that's my
Batman's
favorite
good.
that's my favorite pick. We before I let you go, I know, like, the fans have their favorites. We have our Batman Returns crew, we have our Dark Knight
Yeah.
crew. I'm seeing a lot of hardcore The Batman fans. Some
Yes.
people love The
Yes.
Batman. We have
Yep.
we have we have older fans that still love the Adam West Batman
Adam West.
66 version. So it's generational,
Yeah.
and So there we go. Batman
It's good.
franchise.
What I love about the Batman franchise is
Right.
even in the movies, even in the franchise, if there's a little hiccup in any of the movies, I still think there's something great in all of them. I think that like you have Batman with Michael Keaton, you have the Adam West Batman, you have Val Kilmer Batman, you have George Clooney Batman,
Right.
you know, Ben Affleck, Pattinson.
Right.
Like I still think even in movies like Batman and Robin, where someone will say
Right.
like, "Oh my god, that's the worst movie of all time." It's like, listen, if I can watch that movie today. If I watch that movie and I own it, forgive me, I own it. I own all
It's
of
all
them.
right.
Um, I can watch that movie, and I've always told people, I said, "Yo, if you watch Batman and Robin under the Adam West Batman lens, it's like an incredible movie because you're watching it from like a very silly perspective. Like if
Right.
you watch it from just a very silly perspective, you can have fun with it. I think it's one of those Batman movies where you you got to turn your brain off a little bit, but it's got the Arnold Schwarzenegger one-liners. You know what I mean? Like it's just so silly. So I can even find fun in that. I wouldn't necessarily stack it against any other ones, but I'm like, hey,
Right.
even something like Batman and Robin, I can have fun. I remember watching the Adam West Batman show. I don't recall if it was Nick at Night. I can't recall because obviously that show came out before we were born. And I remember watching that show as a kid and just thinking it was so cool. And then the Michael Keaton Batman movie blew me away with how dark and almost gothic it was. I was so used to the Adam West Batman show and everything else. You mentioned Batman Mask of the Phantasm. I'll never forget how, as a kid, it rocked my brain to watch an animated movie feel the way that felt like that it felt like a movie. And I remember as a kid being like, but it's a cartoon, how can it feel this raw and gritty? Like it was surreal at the time as a kid watching it. And I think that just Batman, you know, he stands the test of time. He's one of the biggest pop culture icons, period. There isn't a single person anywhere who doesn't know who Batman is. You
Right.
can't ask at any point in a kid's life, someone's gonna say like, "Oh, I'm Batman." You know what I mean? Like, "I'm Batman," or "I want to be Batman." You know, Batman is cool. Batman is that one superhero that a lot of people align themselves with because he's always been that superhero that is, you know, just a man. He's just very intelligent. He's got great
Absolutely.
fighting skills. Like he's just a man, and that you know people relate to that, and they've always loved Batman. So I can't be mad at you. I watch Batman Returns every Christmas season. Every Christmas season. Again, I remember I remember going to buy Batman Returns on VHS, and the guy at the register looked at me and he goes, "Really? Batman Returns with the penguins and the rockets on their back?" And I was younger and I was like, "Yeah, I like it." And what? You know what I mean? Like I like this movie. I watch every Christmas because again, even though it's not a perfect movie, you got Michelle Pfeiffer's unbelievable performance as Catwoman. You have Danny DeVito as Penguin killing it. You know
Right.
what I mean? So like even in those movies where people seem to have issues, there's always something really great to take away from it. So again, when I think of Catwoman, I my first instinct, even though Anne Hathaway is incredible, my first thought is always Michelle Pfeiffer because that's who I
Right.
grew up with, and because her performance was just out of this world. So
Right.
even in movies
Right.
where I'm like, oh, that's not too
Shout out
great.
to Zoe Kravitz too, though. You know.
Yeah, for the
Yep.
Batman, you know what I
You
mean?
know.
She's the newest, she's the most
Right.
recent, and she was phenomenal. She was fantastic in that movie as
Absolutely.
well. So like it's great that like even in it's almost like we said in the X-Men movies. In every Batman movie, whether you like it or dislike it, there's always something in it that I can appreciate. Whether
Right.
it's the performances, whether it's the story, whether it's the casting, there's always something about it. Gotham. Look, as a kid, I saw Batman Forever and lost my mind seeing Robin. I went crazy seeing Robin in his suit and being it was Batman and Robin. I was like, "Oh my god." I remember getting all the toys. I remember getting the McDonald's glasses with
Yeah.
all the characters like so like even again even a movie like that where you watch today and go, "Ah, it doesn't really land." I can still go back and remember how it made me feel as a kid watching that movie. So the Batman franchise, man, look,
Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
can't
And
deny it. It's great.
right, and, it's almost like I'm getting older. Once again, I'm getting older, so I'm having appreciation for the movies that maybe I wasn't really into as much, but now, like, I'm seeing history now. Now I'm
Yep.
seeing an evolution of the character and why the character is just such an icon, in the United States and worldwide today. Um, Michael Keaton is 71 years old, and people are losing their minds
Yes.
seeing him in the Batman suit for the Flash movie.
Yep.
You're hearing the Danny Elfman theme in the background, and it's just bringing back all these memories of the Tim Burton original Batman movie, but
Mhm.
that just goes to show you, people aren't thinking that Michael Keaton is 71. They don't care. They're seeing
Nope.
him as Batman again, and
He's Batman.
they're losing their minds. So it's just to show you, how iconic. We have to mention this every single time. Batman v Superman, the warehouse scene. Come on now, you
Bro.
know. So there we go.
So good. And like you said, I had friends that were like, I don't know about the Flash movie. And then that trailer dropped and they saw Keaton and they were like, they have my money.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
So
that's a
this
good
is your
pick, man.
last pick, Ricardo.
It's a good pick. It's a good pick.
Thank you.
My final pick
Yeah.
for anybody who knows me,
Mm-hmm.
who knows me,
Yep.
knows what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
You know what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
I'm going. It involves my favorite movie. It is my favorite franchise.
Oh yeah.
I'm talking about the
Who you
Ghostbusters
gonna
franchise.
call? Yeah. Who you gonna
Who
call?
you gonna call? Ghostbusters. You know what I'm saying? Ghostbusters is my favorite. It is easily one of my favorite franchises. If not, I can't tell you how many times that I have watched Ghostbusters 1, Ghostbusters 2, the real Ghostbusters cartoon that I now have on DVD that my daughter has been able to watch. She's gotten into Ghostbusters. She's got her own proton pack. I did not indoctrinate her. I did not do that. That was a choice that she made. And I was like, believe me when I say she just got into it on her own and it's been special. But I absolutely adore it. And then we introduced Ghostbusters Afterlife, which brought the original cast back. And you had Ivan Reitman's son directing, Jason. And it was such a beautiful bow, on that trilogy. And then you have the all females Ghostbusters, directed by
Yeah.
Paul Feig, and you have that, and it kind of sits in its own universe. It kind of sits in its own pocket, but that I'm assuming that still counts. But I was merely talking about the continuity of Ghostbusters 1, 2, and Afterlife is part 3.
Absolutely.
And the amount of love that they put into that movie, because it was made by family and it was made by someone who was a part of the process growing up as a kid. It almost felt like what it would have been like for me growing up, and someone had given me the keys and said, how would you make this? And that's what was truly special about it. I've always loved Ghostbusters 1. I know a lot of people have said that Ghostbusters 2 was a step down. Many people argue that they don't enjoy it whatsoever. I love 2 just as much as I love 1. There
I
might
like
be a
to as
little bit of
well.
right, like I love to, like, you've got the Statue of Liberty walking down the street of New York trying to spend positivity. I love that aspect. I love Vigo the Carpathian, Sigourney Weaver. I love her in these movies. Yanish in part 2, like, come on, like, you've got what I loved about part 2, because look, I love 1, I love 2. What I loved about part 2 was they dipped a little bit more into the horror aspect. Like, 1 had some scary moments, don't get me wrong, but 2 had some as well, and even went a little bit further with the anger and the rage and the violence and whatnot. So that was great. And then again, you had Afterlife, which felt like a giant love letter, not just to the cast of the original movie, but to the fans as well. And I couldn't help but watch that movie and not be moved to tears numerous times throughout the film, and be forever grateful for that trilogy and that franchise and what they did overall. And then again, the animated cartoon, like I remember growing up and watching that on Saturday mornings and being blown away by it, and also being able to watch it again as an adult and appreciate just how good and sharp that writing was. The real Ghostbusters cartoon has great writing, great storylines, great beats, great emotional depth for a cartoon that you watched when you were probably like 6 years old. They've got amazing episodes with Janine. You know what I mean? A Boogeyman Cometh, Sandman. There's just so much I can go on and
Yeah.
on about the Ghostbusters franchise. I remember growing up having all the toys, the
Oh yeah.
proton pack, the action figures, and just being elated when my dad would come home from the video rental store and he'd have a clear VHS tape, not a tape, the case would be clear, and it would have the Ghostbusters logo on it, and I would lose my mind. And he would rent it for me every so often. I love that he used to do that for me. He'd just bring it home, and I'd have Ghostbusters, and I'm like, oh my god, I can watch it and whatnot. And I used to burn through these tapes, and it just, I don't know, it hits a special place in my heart, that those movies.
Right.
And I think it's just truly special that, just recently we got Afterlife, and
Yeah,
it got me in a way that really brought it
right.
full circle, and we're
S
getting more. We're
yeah,
getting more.
absolutely. So for the record, Desert Island, if it only had to pick one franchise to take with you, you're taking the Ghostbusters
It's
franchise.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
It's Ghostbusters
good stuff.
without a doubt. Again, I mean this with all sincerity. I think I've watched Ghostbusters 1 more than any movie I've ever seen.
Okay,
I think I've seen
I
it
like that.
more times. If you're talking from being a kid and even as an adult, I watched that movie so many times. Whether I was burning out the VHS when I first got DVDs, then I
Yeah,
upgraded to Blu-ray. I own a Proton pack. You know me.
it's
I
okay, yeah.
own a Proton pack. You know what I mean? I spent tons of money on this thing.
Right.
And it's just one of those things that I have a lot of nostalgia for. I have a lot of love for. I have a lot of great childhood memories with that franchise, and knowing that as an adult, I can still watch them and get that same feeling, and I can still watch the new movies and still get that great feeling. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do a little quick recap here to let people know the five that we chose to examine today, and maybe one day we'll rank all these. We'll see. We'll give a
Ooh.
ranking, but the five franchises I chose to speak about today were the Rocky franchise, the X-Men franchise, the John Wick franchise, the Snyderverse,
Oh yeah.
and the Batman franchise. And what were the
Yeah.
five that Ricardo chose there?
So for me, we had the Mission Impossible franchise with your boy Ethan Hunt. We had the Indiana Jones franchise with Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Harrison Ford.
Yeah,
We had the ridiculous, silly outer space car flying Fast and Furious franchise. We had the Harry Potter franchise. We went to Hogwarts for a little bit, and then we had Ghostbusters franchise for me.
good stuff. And I'm glad we both got to go because the ones that I didn't say you said, and the ones that you didn't say I said. So
And there was some that I specifically left off because I knew you were gonna name them anyway. Like
right,
like I was like, "Oh, I know we're gonna get Dark Knight and Batman in here, so I don't
right,
have to say that." So I was like, "Okay, again, let me try to list things that
right,
I don't normally get to talk about, or I'll put
right.
those in."
Did I surprise you with the Snyderverse?
Yeah, I didn't know if that was gonna get in there. I didn't know if that was gonna
Yeah,
get
I
in
didn't
there.
know either, actually. I didn't
I
know
didn't know.
either. I mean, if I had to, and you have to force me, the trilogy. It's
Yeah,
like, oh, well, you can't include Wonder Woman. It's like, okay, well, she's
okay,
gone, then it'll be
okay.
the trilogy, but I'll say the Snyderverse. So that's
Yeah,
the three plus Wonder Woman, and it's mostly because of just the experiences I've had over the past 10 years.
yeah.
And your life experiences are going to influence how you watch movies and such and receive them. So I'm surprised you didn't mention anything, including Superman at all. You
Exactly.
know,
See, and
he's
and it was
he's yeah. He's one
there
of
was
your
there
he's your favorite superhero of all
favorite
time,
superhero of all
but
time.
it's hard to
Favorite
pick
superhero.
a franchise. I mean, you could have said every single Superman movie. You could have,
Mhm.
but they're not all winners.
Again, exactly. Because it's why I said, and I said it earlier. I wanted to talk about franchises that I normally get to talk about, and I feel like everybody, Ghostbusters was getting in regardless. But I was like, everybody knows I'm
Absolutely.
a Superman guy. Everyone. So I was like, all right, let me try to talk about
Yeah.
franchises that I don't normally get to talk about. And I was like, let me name it again. If you would have said, hey Rick, give me your top five in an order of like what's your number one, number two, number three, my top five would have been different because I'd be like, all right, well now we're
Right.
talking about what my favorite. I'm like, oh, Superman would have been up there and
Right.
everything else and whatnot because I can't. It's Superman. Superman got me into comic book films. It got me into
Right.
superheroes. It got me into all of that aspect of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Appreciate that. So
Yeah, and also I wanted to bring up because you did mention about personal experiences, and I
yes.
think that's one thing that I appreciate about our perspective when it comes to watching movies is about not just the movie itself, but it can be about where we are in our lives when we watch them.
Yes.
And it can be where we are in our lives when we choose to rewatch them. Because there are times where, sometimes you'll watch a movie, and I know it's happened to me where I'll watch a movie and maybe I just wasn't ready for it. I didn't know that,
Right.
but maybe mentally and emotionally, I wasn't ready to connect with this movie in a certain way. And then I'll watch it today and get a whole new appreciation for it. Or I'll learn to, and it's not, I don't want to say cut a movie some slack, but I'll learn to take in everything that went into the movie, into any kind of setbacks, or just get a better appreciation for what they were setting out to do that maybe I didn't understand. Because sometimes I know I'm guilty of this. I can watch a movie and be like, oh, because it's not what I personally wanted, I have a negative reaction to it. But then if I sit back and take that preconceived notion out of it, I can go, okay, I appreciate it more. And I like that you brought that up because I do think that's very important. Because I do think that sometimes when I have conversations with some peers that are not necessarily big on movies, they're like, well, why would you feel this way about this movie? And I'm like, oh, well, where I was in my life at the time when I watched it, I connected in this way. And I love that aspect about movies. And I love that. That's why I say sometimes I wish I can give my eyes to people so you can see what I see when I watch that
Right.
movie. You know what I mean? So I'm glad you brought that up because I thought that was very key in especially in naming some of our favorite franchises.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Well, folks, that was our discussion on our favorite franchises. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for listening. I think, see, this opened things up because now we can maybe go into rankings and we can rank these
Yeah.
franchises. We could either do, ranking our favorite franchises, or we can go within the franchises and we can
Yeah.
rank them. I would love to rank all the Spider-Man movies one day, all the
Oh, I
X-Men
would.
movies
Oh,
one day. So um, I think you can tell that, I was a big comic book fan growing up because I picked 3 superhero
yeah.
franchises to talk
Yeah.
about today.
I was trying to be careful and I was like, all right,
Yeah.
let me try to put this one over here. I
Yeah,
was like, okay,
yeah.
okay.
It's okay. I mean, if I had time to talk about a top 10, it would have been a little bit more diverse, but hey, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
It's all right. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening. Please, if you could give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, we would appreciate it. We are at the Panel Bros. Also, please let us know in the comments below. How did you feel about our discussion discussing franchises? What are some of your franchises? Did we miss some out? What would you highlight as some of your favorite franchises? For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.